In-depth analysis of national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.
Get quick access to
got it.
loans
Studio.
from Page Finance.
Good morning, Lagos. So you're tuning in and listening to Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1. Right now, as it's 31 minutes gone past 7, it's time for Freshly Pressed with Valentine.
And Folu.
And right now, we have got our Friday analysts in the studio, -1, but the two that we have are just as fantastic. We have Miss Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Good morning, Miss Ireti. We send out the message, don't worry. And we also have Nwaji in the studio. Big Nwaji, how you doing?
Morning, Folu. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Now, find both of these analysts up on Twitter. You can continue conversations with them on there as well. YG is the corporate MC, both on Twitter and Instagram. And Miss Ireti is Sisio Gay Lagos on both platforms as well. Now, as we delve into the first set of stories, do you remember how you can contact us this morning?
Send us a message on Twitter at Smooth981FM. Use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. You can send us a message on WhatsApp. We will appreciate that. Send it to 0809-444-0981.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much, Val. Now, let's move on. Our first story, very quickly. Nigeria's voter population, well, it hits 84 million people, according to the Guardian newspaper. This is according to the continuous voters registration exercise, the conclusion of it last week. So if you didn't get your PVC this time, tough luck. But don't worry, after the elections, you can go ahead and do just that. The figure, we have about 14 million plus, 14.5 million about their new voters. They added that to the already existing figure of about 69 plus million voters. So we're up at about 84 million mark, apparently. So we're out here now wondering, with the numbers that are being presented towards us, the numbers that are being put out here, YG, do you think that that INEC is also considering perhaps the deaths that have happened in this time? Because they're just talking about these new registrations and the number of people that are there. But are they looking at people that have fallen off that perhaps are no longer with us?
Well, I would like to believe that they are, but I don't particularly think those numbers will impact upon the aggregate scores that you see now, especially with regards to the increase. These numbers are not shocking to me, and if anybody pretty much understands what's going on in Nigeria with regards to the population, they would appreciate why these numbers are increasingly high. You have to understand that a good proportion of individuals who are now at the voting age in Nigeria were not at the voting age 4 years ago, and those numbers reflect the sheer numbers of the population with regards to demographics. When you're looking at somewhere in the range of 60 to 70% of Nigerians who are over under the age of 25.
True.
So when you now begin to look at why you're having these spikes, you're having a lot of new voters who are voting for the first time. A lot of individuals who are a lot more conscious because they have access to information, they have access to social media. So therefore you now begin to see a huge jump in individuals who are now registering for the first time. The exciting part, though, that I must say is that INEC has actually gone on a very, very fantastic charm offensive over the last year and a half with regards to encouraging people to get and go and get their PVCs, which has also contributed to these high numbers, especially in high population areas such as the Northwest and the Southwest, that contribute significantly to those numbers. You're looking at, out of those 18 million people that are new voters, about 6 or 7 million come from those demographic areas of the Northwest and the Southwest, where you have big cities like Lagos and Kano, etc., etc. So that's what plays into it big time. So I think it's just a function of a lot more information being put out there by INEC, and also at the same time by virtue of the fact that you have a bigger number of people who are now of age to be able to vote.
I like that. So now, speaking of people who are now of age to vote, they're registering and they're picking up their PVCs according to the same article. In Lagos alone, we have 1.38 million PVCs that are still uncollected. As a totality, I think we're looking at about 10 million. We'd seen this in an earlier article, I think across the nation, that are just laying there. These are PVCs that are printed, they're ready to go. From last year, the 1.38 is actually from those who registered in 2017. Their PVCs are ready. There's been an additional 750,000 new registrants. The cards will be produced. Why do you think it is that people are not going back to pick these up?
It's a function of process. For me, the process is still not as watertight or attractive as people would like. If I spend God knows how many hours going to register, the likelihood that I'm going to go back to pick up my PVC is going to be very low. I just kind of get apathetic and discouraged by just the sheer logistics of doing that particular exercise. So I think what needs to happen is that INEC need to figure out a tighter way or a better way for people to register and collect their PVCs. I am hoping that sometime in the future, obviously it can't happen now, that they can work something out where if it could be done within the same day or a shorter turnaround period, that would now close this gap between those who are registering and those who are picking up their PVCs. So for me, that's just a function of process.
So just to suggest a process, do you think the same way that they're now partnering, or they're going to partner with the NCC to at least send out messages to people to say, listen, this is ready, that they could partner with NIPOST perhaps to say, listen, go to this post office.
Yeah, distribution centers. So there are so many creative ways that you can do that. You have, for example, if you look at the agency network in Nigeria with regards to what the telecommunications and payments companies use, these guys have fantastic distribution networks all over the country. So if you partner with the existing agency networks that the banks and payment companies use, all these different people that you can go to pay your DSTV and your NEPA bills and all these things, if you can now partner with those individuals to now be able to now have distribution centers for PVCs, that's a function of making sure your process is tighter to make it a lot more attractive. Things, you have to understand, things have to be attractive for people to participate.
Right.
Yeah, thank you very much for that one.
And we have to give a shout out to EIE. Sorry, this is not just an INEC push. EIE has done very well.
Understood. Let's keep it moving though. From the Guardian newspaper, Lagos generates 0.17 million metric tons of global marine plastic waste. Now, this is globally what Lagos alone is contributing. Nigeria has contributed 0.34 million metric tons. We're 9th amongst the countries that pollute oceans and waterways of the world. So Lagos Commissioner for the Environment, Babatunde Okufi, was speaking about this at the Clean Up Lagos Waterfront Initiative in Ibesha Waterfront in Ikorodu yesterday. Ms. Ireti, what are your thoughts on this, especially looking at the attitude of Lagosians and Nigerians as a whole to what the waterways are there for? Because we constantly see in the morning drives defecation into the water. We see people throwing their waste plastic. And do you think perhaps that the companies that also produce some of these plastic products have some kind of responsibility in joining this drive to ensure that their products are not the cause of our eventual demise and destruction?
Look, first of all, I've got to say this in Yoruba. Sorry, only doti niwa, really. Doti. And it just basically means we are fundamentally untidy, dirty people. You see it every single second, and it's in the cities. You're correct.
Cities, yes.
The villages don't have the same thing.
No,
they
very
don't.
careful.
Yeah, very careful.
Because there's an understanding that the waterways are life and that it feeds you and nourishes you.
Absolutely. And that's part of what's actually in this art, in this piece. Now, the interesting thing is, what we also fail to understand is not just the waterways, but how the fact that we are so untidy and dirty, how it's affecting us as a person, as a people, and the sort of, how should I say, the toxic and the toxins that it actually throws out into the air that we're forced to breathe in. Now, each person, it's about each person taking responsibility. Everything that's in this article is totally correct. You know, you can't begin to argue it. Marine ecosystem was delicate and must be protected. Of course it must be. Waterways and waterfronts to see the natural resources as precious gifts of nature. Of course they are. We should protect them. We should almost worship them, which we actually do by our traditional religions. We do worship the water. But we get to the cities and we forget all the things that are of value to us because we become a bit more westernized, since Lagos is the equivalent of our New York or Americana or whatever it is. So one of the things that I'd like to say to Lagos State is, Governor Ambode, actually my son calls him Bodsy. He reckons, you know, he's Bodsy. Yeah, it says Bodsy. So yeah, it's pretty funky. I thought, oh, Ambode would like that. So Governor Ambode, what I'd like to say is I would like him to actually to sanction or mandate, that's the word I'm looking, to mandate private waterway clubs, private clubs which are on the waterways, and also private sectors who use the waterways, whose business rely on the waterways, with a particular type of tax, okay, towards cleaning and maintaining those waterways. Now, I'm not saying single them out, I'm not saying use them as scapegoats, but listen, if you know that something is of importance to your business, to your livelihood, then surely you're going to want to take an extra care with it. Now, outside of that is then to actually go back and put, you know, those people Buhari had out where you could not, back in the 80s, where you couldn't throw, what did they call them? Where you couldn't throw something on the floor. That's it. Can we please have them back? Because I've become why. I really have. I stop and I challenge.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Ms. Ireti. More stories that we are getting into. This one is of particular interest. Unwilling to make finances public, the Ondo State government has challenged the Freedom of Information law at the Supreme Court. Now, we've taken this very lengthy story from the Premium Times, so please do go over there and read the details of the story. But essentially, what has happened is that the Ondo state government has challenged the ruling of the Court of Appeal, which had said earlier this year that the Freedom of Information Act is applicable to all 36 states of the Federation. Now, it's an unpopular move with a lot of state governors, apparently, who are refusing to essentially reveal financial information. They're arguing technicalities and saying that, listen, it doesn't really extend to the it only extends to matters that are listed on the legislative or concurrent legislative list. It doesn't really extend to them. But of course, the counter argument is that citizens have a right to know the details of expenditure of public funds generated from their taxes. Anji, what do you make of this?
Oh boy.
That's how I felt when I read it. I was like, what's wrong?
Okay, first and foremost, there's a statement that needs to go out before this actually, we get into the nitty-gritty of it. And that first statement is that Nigerian states have no powers to reject requests filed under the Freedom of Information Act. That is the law.
Yeah.
I think the challenge here is that a lot of people who are currently in state governments and everything else are making or trying to make a distinction between what is public record and what is public information.
Yes.
The Freedom of Information Act is the distinction that clarifies everything. That as long as you are in a capacity where people are paying taxes for that particular office that you hold, all information that now comes out of discussions, out of readings, or out of passings, or whatever the case may be, is open to the public at the point that the public requests for it to become in. So anything that was redacted at any particular point should now be revealed. That is the law. Now, when states now begin to get into this, obviously they do not want the minutiae of what they do to come out, or whatever the case may be, but they have to appreciate that there is a federal law that supersedes whatever state law exists, and is actually quite clear and quite simple. So my challenge is always this: when we pass such quote-unquote sophisticated laws in Nigeria, I think we need to have follow-up conferences explaining what these actual laws mean, because people will take them to mean their own particular
And how they affect
interpretation
the states.
and how they affect the states. So
Okay.
I think, in fairness to the states, they're coming from a perspective of their own limited understanding. That's fine in the case of Ondo with regards to what this article is all about, because we're talking about money. We're not talking about, if it was anything else, trust me, they'll release the information.
Here you go.
But when you're talking about cash,
How are you spending our
how are you
money?
spending our money? They now get into this whole technicality of what is
Yeah,
public
get
record and what is
defensive.
public information. So can we just, I think everybody needs to, arm themselves with as much information as possible with regards to what this exactly means, so that when you make arguments regarding your position on these things, you speak from a place of informed authority.
So here's a question. Do you think that perhaps this is something that our National Assembly should be looking into? So citizens should be asking their representatives within the National Assembly to make sure that whether it's made clear, whether the conferences are had, because this is part of what we vote for, isn't it?
You
And
see,
with an election coming up.
You asked that question, but who is it for? Is it for the National Assembly, or is it for us Nigerians? Because frankly speaking, if they don't feel the need to do it, they're not going to do it.
Absolutely.
So it's the people that vote them in that have to take that responsibility. You need to come up with think tanks. You need to come up with conscious groups. You need to come up with pressure groups that put together these conferences that can be sponsored to now challenge the National Assembly on these particular matters.
Well, I ask this because they deal with legislation specifically.
Yeah.
So if you bring up the legislation and the people that are meant to implement it, as far as we're concerned, are not taking that into cognizance, perhaps that's something they should also be fighting for on behalf of the people, especially as an election year is coming up.
100%. I agree with you 100%, but a lot of this also has responsibility. It's advanced citizenship, right? Advanced citizenship is also you, the citizen, taking responsibility to do these things. I believe that the points that you're making are actually all there. This Freedom of Information Act was passed in 2011 by Goodluck Jonathan. It's nothing new. So the question now becomes, you as a Nigerian citizen, are you ready to follow through the legality and the processes of trying to get this information? So we need to move away from what government keep doing, and we need to start asking ourselves some serious introspective questions regarding what are we now ready to do to actually hold these people accountable.
Citizens, are you ready?
No,
Hold
they
your
never are.
BBC. Be ready. Miss Ireti, let's talk about this next thing. Speaking of being ready, are we ready for earthquakes and tremors? That's what happened in Abuja recently. So ThisDay newspaper has the details where earth tremors rock Abuja. Now, panic did grip some residents of the FCT, especially as tremors were felt in Apapa and Maitama districts. Now, for several decades, there have been quarrying activities, rock blasting that have been ongoing in the Buhari Area Council. But FEMA, after initially not being certain or not putting out definite information as to what could have caused the tremors, finally put out a statement by the Director General saying that it was caused by a break along the fault line. So yes, it was an actual mini earthquake there. Ms. Ireti, your thoughts on our preparation?
Forget the preparation. It's the casual way by which they said it. Oh, it's just a fault, you know, along the lines. I'm sorry. That's a mini earthquake, as in earthquake. Can we just sink that in for a second?
The earth moved.
The earth, thank you, as in shift, as they say in Nigeria.
Yeah, as a seismic shift.
And nobody seems to think it's a big deal. My good God, it is a big deal. Immediately, federal government should order for an immediate investigation and a full report that must be published publicly. We must read this. This can't be taken for granted, because that's the earth, that's nature warning you that it's going to be your turn soon. It is going to be your turn. And guess what? We know we're never ready for emergencies. Water, we deal with it every year. We are never ready for it. Earthquake, it's going to be a whole different level. Now, very quickly, so they say to you, one of the advice they give is, oh, people should locate a safe room, drop down and take cover under a desk or tables and hold on tight to it, while those outdoors should find a clear spot away from building, trees and power lines. Now, I would like more education. Thank you very much, Mr. FEMA, former, whatever it is you are. More education. I want public information on television, announcements on radio, so people can get prepared. Yes, Lagos, we might be far away from it, but guess what? If it affects your brother, my sister, it's affecting all of us.
Very
So
interesting.
let's get doing.
This ties into the way that state governments actually spend their money, because
Yes,
whenever
absolutely.
there are these issues, the state emergency services never seem to be able to respond outside of Lagos State, which we do have to give some accolades to for that. But we tend to see it quite a lot.
But I think because this is very new, federal government needs to lead from, this has to be led from central right now, rather than even states, because central needs to understand what's going on, and then talk to the states and educate the states, and it goes downwards with immediate effect.
Very interesting. Now we have a message in from. Please put your name to your messages.
Faith sent in this message.
Okay, Faith. Thank you very much. Faith says, "Hi, Folu and Val. As I say every time the news brings up this matter, I haven't collected my PVC. Every time I go, there's one story or the other.
Thank you.
There's usually a long queue of people waiting to collect theirs too. We wait for ours, but we're still unable to collect our PVCs. Maybe they want us to pay first. It's INEC officials who are frustrating this process."
Unless you're the child of a billionaire and then you get pushed to the front, as somebody said on Twitter the other day. Yes.
Not true, because I'm not a child of any billionaire or anything, and I went and collected mine. Yes,
Yeah,
it
but
took
you're
time,
also
but I did it.
yeah, but you also didn't have to wait. Somebody did testify
I
that
did.
no, somebody did testify, and she said she actually confronted them and said, "Look, why is the child? Do you want me to mention the name? No, you don't.
No,
Why
I'm
is the child of this billionaire
I'm not
pushing to the front?"
disputing that some
Yeah.
people do that.
And
but
some
I'm saying
people
that
go
it's not
through
the
hell
general
trying
rule.
to.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
but
I did.
a lot of
Yes.
people go through hell.
I know.
But if I've been queuing for an hour and the child of a billionaire who is very popular, who plays music, comes in front, arrives with her bodyguards and goes straight to the front, I'm sorry, I'm going to challenge that, and that should not be allowed.
Not disputing that.
That's
stick with it, and
it shouldn't happen.
All of you have more power together than the
She
one
did
child of a
challenge.
billionaire.
She did
That's what I'm saying,
challenge,
not
and
the one
nobody
person,
took her.
not the one person.
Nobody
the
took
group.
her seriously.
Because in our area, our group, we were vicious about this, and we were organized.
Let's all get vicious.
There you go.
All right, so let's get vicious about taxes. So Punch newspaper has a story. FIRS to sell tax evaders properties and freeze 6,772 accounts. Watching this report, the executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mr. Tunde Fowler, said on Thursday that the government would sell properties built and developed in corporate names across the country on which taxes were not paid. He said they started this exercise a year ago, and now they started with Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, probably to set precedents to other states. But looking at this story, really, how compliant do you think the companies would they be ready to go through with this eventually?
For me, this is a function of how tough we want to get with enacting laws. There's an old saying from Senegal, I think I want to say it's the Mandinka or one of those tribes in the westernmost parts of Africa, that refers to a concept called Sankofa, which is actually a bird, that talks about in order for you to get and seek clarification towards where you're going, you have to know from which way you came from. What we are dealing with in Nigeria is legacies and decades of just absolute abysmal mentalities with regards to how we now pay our tax. That's why we're where we are. That's why you have all these properties that have been built in companies' names that do not have any particular compliance status with regards to paying tax and all these things. These things have been existing for a very long time. So So now that you have an absolutely competent, sound individual who is just running a very watertight system in Tunde Fowler, who's now coming in to shake things up, to put things in place. I'm a big fan of his because I appreciate what he's doing. No, just hold on.
I was just clearing my throat. Sorry.
That's fine. But my point is that in order for you to now appreciate what he's doing, we have to appreciate where we're coming from. So to your question specifically, Val, about how successful are we going to be, we might not be right now, but I just think that the FIRS need to continue pushing as hard as they did. I was very, very happy with what they did with VATE, which was the voluntary asset information, income declaration scheme. And a lot of people did come forward to declare their assets, and a lot of people did come forward to indicate that this is what they have. We need to have more campaigns like that. We need to have more initiatives like that. It is tiring, it is relentless, but it must happen because of the legacy of just tax evasion situations we've had in Nigeria. So I encourage it. I just think that people need to continue doing it. I know Mr. Ireti is coming from the perspective of, what happens once people pay tax, etc., etc.
No, let me tell you very quickly where I'm
We don't
coming
have
from.
time for that because
Tax
we literally have 9
declaration
minutes
by
for the rest of the
governors and
story.
federal
Mr.
staff.
Ireti, we have 9 minutes for
Tax
the rest of the story.
declaration. That's all I want to see.
So yeah, so I encourage it. Please, let's just continue going.
All right, we'll start somewhere then. Thank you very much. Punch newspaper still with this next story, but I'll skip that for a bit. Let's go to this one from Premium Times newspaper. Mr. Ireti, I'll come to you with this one. So a prosecution witness, Abubakar Madaki, on Thursday told the Federal High Court in Lagos that the former governor of Oyo State, Rashidi Ladoja, who's been in court for a while now, purchased 26 cars for 14 ex-legislators from the state coffers. What do you make of this story?
What do what do I make of it? Oh my gosh. We don't have enough time to tell you what I make of it, and a lot of what I make of it can't be said on the radio, especially not in public anyway.
Okay.
So, Mr. Ladoja, this is one of the most astounding things in here, accusations in here. Mr. Ladoja is accused of removing £600,000 from the state coffers in 2007, which he allegedly sent to Binkwe Ladoja, his daughter, who was in London at the time. I mean, absolutely disgusting. What do I make of it?
But the daughter said she received only 100,000.
I don't care if she only received £1.
And
how
then
dare they?
His defense lawyer said...
Yes, so it goes on.
So yeah, there's the dates there were conflicting dates or timelines really, in this case, and then that the cars were not given as gifts; they were loans to the legislators.
Yeah, but
and there was an agreement signed to which the plaintiff, or rather, was not privy to.
Well, yes, that's the cars. So 26, let's just talk about it again. 26 cars was apparently, allegedly, have been given to legislators by Ladoja. 26 cars from about 5 million, I think they're worth of like 5 million naira each or something. Now, again, if that is true, that would have come from the state coffers. The question here is, a governor is being accused, as we all constantly complain about, he's been accused of using state funds as his personal ATM. This is where the issue is. I don't care whether he gave it to his daughter, his cousin, his houseboy, his driver. The fact of the matter is, how is it possible? How in God's name is it possible that state governors can have access to state money without so much as anybody being able to stop them? No sort of alarm bells. And they don't answer to anyone because guess what? They effectively become gods once they become governor. That's where the big issue is. So this has been going on since 2006. We can keep taking them to court and accusing them, and EFCC can keep charging them. They never end up in jail anyway. So what is it? What exactly? What is going to stop the next governor from doing this?
This case is still in court, so I would say very little about it. Now, from Punch newspaper, we'll have this next story. Apapa gridlock, still talking about the gridlock there. NPA, Nigerian Ports Authority, has asked the Lagos and Ogun state governments together to make trailer parks available for licensing as part of efforts to address the gridlock on the Apapa port access roads. They're saying that they've actually been calling for private establishments to get their parks licensed, but they've been reluctant. What would you say is the reason why they've been dragging their feet? Do they probably sense some, lack of cooperation from the government?
Well, we've been talking about processes and planning all morning, and when I always come up with these Apapa stories, I always look at it from the perspective of, do we categorize things into a quadrant of what is important and urgent versus what is not urgent and what is important? What is important and urgent now, which is what the fire brigade approach we're tackling, is how do we now solve this gridlock problem on the bridge? So by doing that, we're trying to ensure that we build more trailer parks and we extend it out to get them off the roads, etc., etc. That is a solution to an important and urgent task. But when you now go into long-term planning, the question now becomes, how do you now actually solve this problem once and for all? The big question is that you need to make sure the other ports are viable for people to now divert their loads and goods coming into the country. So when you look at situations that happen in the other ports and rivers in Calabar, they're currently set up in the sense of that you can only have flat-bottom vessels go through there because the ocean depth is not deep enough.
Yeah.
So my conversation is, why aren't we investing in some level of dredging in those particular areas to make sure that the ocean depths are deep enough to now have these heavy articulated ships now be diverted towards there? So this is what happens when you don't plan and think through how best to come up with a solution. You just get into a fire brigade approach. And I'm sorry, you having trailer parks in different places for the trailers to go and sit is not going to solve that problem. That current tin can on Apapa port are absolutely at capacity. That's just it. So there's nothing you're going to do that's going to make it any more amicable or any more easy. You're going to continue to have those traffics. You don't have railways built. You don't have any other ways of getting those goods out the services. So no matter what you do with the roads, I mean, they're here boasting about 85% completion on the road rehabilitation and all that stuff. That doesn't make any sense. The trailers are still going to be on the road. Where are they going to go?
But what you're saying that those things you mentioned, those elements or those palliative measures, so to speak, are long-term projects, or seem to be long-term projects. What could be the short-term measures that the government could actually put in place to make sure that the traffic reduces over time?
Those are the short-term measures, but it's only going to come back. It's like putting Band-Aid over a gunshot wound. I'm sorry, it's not going to actually take care of the wound. So we need to make sure we are talking about enhancing the capacity of the other ports to be able to divert these goods. That's the only solution in town.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move very quickly to this next story from Punch newspaper. Inspector General of Police dismisses the 3 policemen who raided Clark's house. I wouldn't go into much detail because we've actually been taking this story through the week. But Mr. Ireti, what do you make of this? Will I say punishment? Or
well, it's very quick.
As the
And
last resort.
you have to ask yourself, it's interesting how very quickly these policemen have been dismissed. And also, apparently, the taxi driver that apparently gave was the informant, alleged informant anyway, may also be in charge, or he's been charged for telling falsehood and misled police action. What I don't understand is how policemen can just take gossip, if you like, from it's all so bizarre. This country is just so absurd. So a taxi driver says to Mr. Policeman Nwaji, sorry sir, so Pa Edwin Clark, that man, that big goga, pata, statesman, he gets arms for a house. So what? They then go there and raid it. Come on, this is total codswallop. Something is going on somewhere. Somebody senior gave the instructions to go and embarrass Edwin Clark, and they're trying to cover it up. And these people, these policemen and the taxi driver are being used as scapegoats. So I really don't buy this. But unfortunately, we probably won't get to know any more than this. So I'm obliged to read this out. So there's a statement that's gone out, I think, from the chief national chairman of All Progressive Congress, Adams Oshiomhole. They say, I sharing the pain and embarrassment Chief Clark was subject to by the said police officers, particularly as no reason has been given for the action. This is one matter the IGP must never sweep under the carpet, yada, yada, yada.
All right, thank you very much for that. To round up with a few of the messages up on our live stream, we have Yomi Bosude, who first of all says Mr. Ireti is a real lotter. That says on the issue of tossing things out of cars, it just goes to show how ill-mannered people are and the inability to think deep of the ripple effects of their actions.
Bring back why.
While Tunde Okufi says there is a culture of impunity in Nigeria, the same people who casually toss bottles off the Third Mainland Bridge would not do so in other societies. It's a result of a lack of consequences of our actions. While up on WhatsApp, we've got messages coming in. Noni, talking about public funds, says so long as public funds and people's taxes are used by public bodies, they are accountable to the same people through the Freedom of Information Act.
Boom.
The problem is that most of those in political office don't feel they're accountable to the people as a godfather put them there.
Bam.
States should be transparent and publish information in the first place, and Nigeria's public sector system is where you owe them, but they're not accountable to you in any way. We, the people, just sit down and look and say, God, we help us. All right.
Unfortunately, that's the truth.
Still more messages in. James from Marine Beach just says, the gridlock isn't just in Apapa. We'll come and see Badagry Expressway. You cry. So sorry. And Wingo's comments on the issue of the raid of Chief Clark's house, saying it's been blown out of proportion. Why were the policemen treated like criminals? I thought they obtained a search warrant and acted on a tip-off.
Exactly.
When does carrying out a lawful search become a crime? Lagos, that's all the time we've got this morning. Thank you very much, Miss Ireti. Please find her up on Twitter. She's at Cecilio Lagos, and find Nwaji up there as the corporate MC. You can continue to find Val and I here this morning, because coming up next at 8:15, we'll be talking sports inside the locker room. Of course, we're going to be talking about the Kaepernick.
Yep.
But come on, you know.
Just do it.
I stand with Cat.
From Page Financials.
Oh,
Page Financials.
That was good. Thank you. It was fun.
Cool. We made it. We
And
made
we
it,
did
guys.
that. And we did all the stories. And we did them in depth. More depth than for some reason we did. We did.
Two people. That's all.
Yeah, it's because